The strange encounter. The evening sun was setting behind the tall walls of Alan's grand mansion. The air smelled of roses from the garden, and the sound of laughter echoed faintly across the yard. Alan, a wealthy single father, had just returned from his business meeting. He loosened his tie, tired from the long day, but when he heard the laughter of his son David, his face softened. His son's smile was the only thing that gave him peace after his wife's death. But today something was different. The laughter sounded strange, mixed with another voice. Alan stopped near the wide glass window that overlooked the garden. His eyes narrowed when he saw David sitting on the grass with someone else. At first he thought it was another child from the neighborhood, but as he stepped closer, his heart jumped. The figure sitting beside his son was not like any other child he had seen before. She looked young, maybe 10 or 11, but her clothes were torn and dirty. Her long hair hung messy around her shoulders. But what shocked Alan the most were her eyes. They glowed faintly, almost like tiny stars hidden inside them. Her skin shimmered in the sunlight, a shade too pale, almost silver. She didn't look human. Alan's instinct told him to rush outside and grab his son, but something stopped him. He leaned closer to the window, trying to hear what they were saying. The girl was holding a small stick and drawing shapes in the dirt. "See, this is 2. If you put one more here, it becomes 3, she said softly. David clapped his hands. "You're so smart. My teacher never showed me like this." "You make it easy." Alan's breath caught in his throat. The strange girl was teaching his son, teaching him with patience, with a kindness that made the boy laugh with joy. He stepped outside quietly, his polished shoes crunching on the stone path. The girl froze when she saw him. Her glowing eyes widened, and the stick fell from her trembling hand. She looked like a wild animal ready to run. "David," Alan said in a firm voice. "Who is this?" David stood quickly, nervous but excited. "Dad, don't be mad. She's my friend. I found her near the school gate yesterday. She was hungry, so I gave her my sandwich. She's really nice, Dad. Look, she's teaching me math." Alan's jaw tightened. He looked at the girl again. Her bare feet were scratched, her dress torn. She looked fragile, but her eyes carried something, a hidden strength or maybe a story untold. The girl whispered, almost too softly, "Please, don't send me away." Alan frowned. "Who are you? Why are you here?" The girl hesitated. For a moment, her glowing eyes filled with fear. She looked at David as if seeking his protection. David quickly grabbed her hand and said, "Dad, she's not bad. She just needs help." Alan's mind raced. He was a rich man, a cautious man. He had enemies in business, people always watching. Bringing a strange alien girl into his home was dangerous. What if she was a spy? What if she was dangerous? But then he saw how gently she held his son's hand. He saw how safe David felt beside her. His heart pulled in 2 directions, fear and compassion. The girl finally spoke, her voice trembling. "My name is Lyra. I don't have a home." Alan's eyes hardened. "No home, no parents?" She shook her head, her messy hair falling in front of her face. I lost them. I just wanted to stay near the lights of the school. I thought maybe I could learn too. But then, your son, he was kind to me." David's eyes filled with hope. "Dad, can she stay? Just for a little while. She's smart and she's my friend." Alan stayed silent. His chest felt heavy. He had promised himself never to let strangers into his world, not after losing his wife. But here was a girl, an alien child, teaching his son with kindness. And she was begging with eyes that seemed older than her years. The wind rustled through the garden, carrying the sound of the fountain nearby. Alan's heart pounded as he stared at her. There was something strange, something mysterious. Why would a homeless alien child end up here in his garden teaching his boy? He finally said in a low voice, "This is dangerous, David. We don't know who she is." But even as he spoke, he knew this was only the beginning. He had stumbled into something far bigger than himself. And whatever it was, his life and his son's was about to change forever. A father's Dowdaland did not sleep well that night. The mansion was quiet, but his mind was loud with questions. He sat in his study, staring at the glowing fireplace. His son's words echoed in his head. "She's my friend. She's smart. Please, Dad." He had built his life on rules, rules of business, rules of family, rules of survival. He never allowed strangers into his world. Yet here was this girl, an alien child with glowing eyes, sitting in his garden, teaching his son as if she belonged there. Alan poured himself a glass of water, but his hand trembled slightly. What if she is dangerous? What if someone is looking for her? The next morning, Alan walked into the kitchen. David was already there eating cereal, and beside him sat the girl, Lyra. She was holding a book David had pulled from the shelf. She traced the words slowly, her lips moving as if she were trying to learn them. When she noticed Alan, she froze again. Her glowing eyes dropped to the floor. David smiled nervously. "Dad, look! She can read some words now. I'm helping her too." Alan forced a thin smile but said nothing. He sat down at the table, watching the girl carefully. She ate nothing, only sipped water from a cup David had given her. Her face looked tired, but her posture was polite, almost respectful. Finally, Alan asked, "Where do you come from, Lyra?" She hesitated. Her small hands gripped the book tightly. "Far away," she whispered. "I ran away." Alan leaned forward. "Ran away from what?" Her lips trembled, but she stayed silent. David quickly said, "Dad, don't scare her. She's just a kid." Alan's eyes narrowed. A kid or something else? He couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something important. After breakfast, he told David to go play in the garden. Then he turned to Lyra. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "I don't know why you are here, but this house is not a place for secrets. If there are people looking for you, they could come here. They could hurt my son. Do you understand?" Her glowing eyes lifted slowly. For the first time, Alan saw something deep inside them. Not just fear, but pain, like she had lived through things no child should. "I didn't want to bring trouble," she said softly. "I only wanted a safe place." Alan studied her for a long moment. He wanted to believe her. But he had learned through years of business battles that people always had hidden motives. He could not risk his son's safety on kindness alone. That afternoon, Alan drove David to school. As they sat in the car, David leaned closer. "Dad, you don't trust her, do you?" Alan sighed. "It's not about trust, son. It's about safety." "But she's not bad," David insisted. "She's kind. She helped me with homework and she listens. Nobody listens to me like she does." Alan's heart softened, but he forced himself to stay cautious. "David, sometimes people can seem kind but still bring danger. We have to be careful." David folded his arms, upset. Mom would have helped her. Those words cut deep. Alan gripped the steering wheel tighter. His late wife had always believed in helping others, no matter who they were. Alan had admired that once. But after losing her, he built walls around his heart. He couldn't take risks anymore. When they returned home, Alan noticed something strange. Lyra was in the library, sitting quietly, surrounded by books. She couldn't read all the words, but she tried. She looked hungry for knowledge, as if every letter was a treasure. Alan stood at the door, watching. She wasn't stealing, she wasn't causing harm. She was simply trying to learn. Something stirred inside him, memories of his wife teaching their son with the same gentle patience. But his doubt remained strong. Why was she here? Why near his mansion? Why now? That night, Alan locked his study door and searched through private files on his computer. He contacted an old friend in the security service. "I need information," he said quietly, "about alien children seen near the city." His friend replied, "That's dangerous territory, Alan. If there's a girl like that, she won't be safe. Someone will be looking for her. You don't want to get involved?" Alan closed the call, his chest heavy. The warning only deepened his doubts. Later, as he passed by David's room, he paused. The door was half open. Inside, David and Lyra sat on the floor, playing a simple game with marbles. David laughed freely, a sound Alan had not heard in years. Lyra smiled too, a soft, fragile smile that lit up her glowing eyes. Alan leaned against the wall, torn. He doubted her story. He feared the danger she could bring. Yet he couldn't deny the joy she brought to his son. The joy that had been missing for so long. For the first time in years, Alan felt uncertain about his own rules, and deep inside he wondered, was this girl really a danger? Or was she a gift his broken family desperately needed? The girl's story. The rain tapped softly on the tall windows of the mansion that evening. Alan sat in his chair, staring at the flickering light of the lamp. Across from him sat Lyra, her small hands folded nervously in her lap. David had begged his father to let her stay the night, and Alan had agreed, only to hear her truth. He wanted answers. "Lyra," Alan began in a calm but firm voice, "you cannot keep hiding. If you want to stay here, you must tell me your story. Who are you? Where did you come from? The girl lowered her glowing eyes, her voice trembling. For a moment she seemed ready to remain silent, but then she looked at David. His innocent smile gave her courage. She took a deep breath and spoke. I was born not far from here, she said slowly. But my home was not like yours. It was a camp. Alan leaned forward. A camp? Yes, she whispered. A place where children like me, alien children, were kept. We were not free. We worked every day, cleaning machines, carrying heavy things. If we made mistakes, we were punished. Her voice shook, but she forced herself to continue. I never knew my parents. Some said they were taken away. Some said they were gone forever. All I had was the camp, the fences, and the guards. They told us we were worthless, but I wanted more. David's eyes widened. That's horrible! Alan felt his chest tighten. He had expected lies or excuses, but her words carried the weight of truth. Her trembling hands, the fear in her eyes, no child could fake that pain. How did you escape? Alan asked carefully. Lyra looked at the window, her glowing eyes reflecting the rain. One night the guards were drunk. They left the gate half open. I ran. I didn't stop running. For days I hid in old buildings behind trash bins. I was hungry, but I found half-eaten food. I was cold, but I kept moving. I thought, maybe I could find a school. I wanted to see books, to learn. I wanted to be free. She paused, her voice breaking. But people chased me. Some wanted to sell me. Some wanted to turn me back to the camp. I hid in the shadows until David found me. Alan clenched his fists. The idea of his son meeting her in such a dangerous state filled him with fear, but also something else. Anger. Anger at the world that had treated a child this way. Why did they keep children like you in that place? Alan asked. Lyra's eyes darkened. Because we are different. We are not human. Our eyes, our skin, we cannot hide it. Some humans fear us. Some use us. They said we are property, not people. But I believe we are more than that. I believe we can learn. We can live like anyone else. The room grew silent. Only the sound of rain filled the air. Alan sat back, his heart heavy. He had lived in a world of wealth and power, where deals and contracts decided futures. But this child's story showed him another world, one built on cruelty and chains. David moved closer to Lyra and took her hand. You're not worthless. You're smart and you're kind. You're my friend. Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile, though tears shone in her glowing eyes. Alan rubbed his forehead. He had wanted to doubt her. He had wanted to believe she was only a runaway liar. But her story was too raw, too real. It explained her hunger for knowledge, her fear of being found, her desperate need for safety. Still, his doubt was not gone. If your story is true, he said slowly, then people are looking for you. Dangerous people. That puts my son at risk. Lyra's head dropped. I know. That is why I thought of leaving. I didn't want to cause trouble. But when David gave me food, when he smiled at me, it felt like the first time I was alive. Alan felt a sharp pain in his chest. He remembered the loneliness in his son's eyes since his mother's death. He remembered the empty dinners, the silence of the mansion. And now this girl, an alien child, had brought laughter back into his son's world. He stood up and walked to the window. The rain outside blurred the lights of the city. What am I doing? He thought. Am I protecting my son, or am I shutting him away from the one thing that makes him happy? Behind him, Lyra's small voice broke the silence. If you want, I will leave. I will not cause more danger, but thank you for letting me stay here tonight. Alan turned, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, he saw not an alien, not a burden, but a child, lost, fragile, and yet full of hope. David stood quickly. No, Dad. She can't go. Please don't send her away. Alan closed his eyes. His mind battled with his heart. He had spent years hiding behind caution, but now in front of him stood a girl who had survived more than most men could endure. And his son needed her. At last Alan said quietly, You will stay? For now, but under my roof you follow my rules, and I will find out more about who you are, Lyra. Lyra's glowing eyes widened with relief. David hugged his father tightly, whispering, Thank you, Dad. But Alan's doubts were not gone. He had heard her story, but one question remained. Why did fate bring this alien child into his world? And deep inside, he feared that her past was not finished with her yet. An unwanted visitor. The mansion stood quiet under the pale moonlight. The heavy rain of the previous night had cleared, leaving the air sharp and cool. Alan sat in his study, the clock ticking loudly on the wall. His thoughts were restless. Lyra's story had shaken him. He wanted to believe her, but a voice inside still whispered, "What if she is lying? What if she brings danger here?" That unease grew stronger the next morning. As Alan stepped outside with his coffee, he noticed something odd: tire marks on the gravel road near the gate. The guards claimed no one had entered, but Alan's instincts told him otherwise. Inside the mansion, David and Lyra sat on the floor with books scattered around them. David was laughing as Lyra carefully tried to sound out words she barely understood. The joy in his son's eyes almost made Alan forget his worries. Almost. Later that afternoon, while Alan was on a call with his business partners, a sharp knock echoed through the front door. The sound was loud, urgent, unlike the polite knocks of his visitors. The butler hurried to answer, but Alan raised his hand. "I'll see who it is." He walked to the door himself, uneasy. When he opened it, two men stood outside. They were tall, dressed in dark coats, their faces partly hidden by the shadow of their hats. Their eyes, however, were sharp and cold. "Good afternoon, Mr. Allen," one of them said smoothly. "We're with the City Welfare Department. We're searching for a missing child." Alan's pulse quickened. He kept his face calm. "A missing child?" "Yes," the second man said, pulling out a photo. It was a blurred image, but Alan recognized the glowing eyes instantly. It was Lyra. Alan's grip on the door tightened. "I haven't seen her," he said evenly. The men exchanged glances. "Are you sure?" "We have reason to believe she was spotted near this neighborhood. She's dangerous, Mr. Allen, very dangerous." Alan's jaw tightened. He remembered Lyra's trembling hands, her soft voice, her desperate wish to learn. Dangerous? No, but he could not let them know she was inside. "I'm sure," he said firmly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have business." The men did not move immediately. Their eyes studied him as if weighing his words. Finally, one of them smiled thinly. "Of course, but if you see her, report immediately, for your own safety." Alan closed the door, his heart pounding. He leaned against the wood, breathing hard. They knew. Somehow they already knew she was here. When he returned to the living room, he found Lyra peeking from behind the staircase. Her glowing eyes were wide with fear. "They're looking for me, aren't they?" she whispered. Alan froze. David ran up, worried. "Dad, what's happening?" "Who was at the door?" Alan forced calm into his voice. "Just some officials. Nothing you need to worry about." But his hands still trembled. Lyra stepped forward, her small frame shaking. "They are not officials. They are hunters. They work for the ones who kept us in the camp. They will not stop until they take me back," David gasped. "No, Dad, we can't let them." Alan's mind spun. He had money, power, influence, but he had never faced something like this. He stared at the girl, her glowing eyes filled with terror, and felt the weight of a choice pressing on him. That night, Alan doubled the security at the gate. Guards patrolled the grounds, cameras were checked twice. But even as he locked every door and window, he couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching from the shadows. In David's room, Lyra sat quietly by the window, hugging her knees. David tried to cheer her with stories and jokes, but her smile was weak. When Alan entered, she looked at him with trembling lips. "You should have told them," she whispered. "It would have been safer for you." For David. Alan stood silently for a long time. Finally, he said, "I don't hand over children to wolves." His voice was cold, but his eyes betrayed the storm inside. Lyra's tears glistened in the moonlight. She lowered her head, whispering, "They won't stop. They'll come again." And she was right. The very next evening, one of Alan's guards reported seeing a black car parked near the mansion's edge, its engine silent, its lights off. When approached, the car sped away into the night. Alan knew then this was not over. Inside the house, David clung to Lyra, vowing he would protect her. Alan watched them both, his doubt twisting into something heavier, a sense of responsibility he had not asked for, but could not ignore. He had welcomed an alien girl into his home, and now unwanted visitors were at his door. The question was no longer if trouble would come, but when. And Alan realized, with a chill running down his spine, that he was no longer just a father protecting his son. He was the only shield between a hunted child and the predators outside. Lessons beyond books, The mansion seemed brighter the next morning, though Alan's heart still carried shadows of fear. He could not erase the image of the two hunters standing at his door. Their words haunted him. "She's dangerous. Report her." But when he saw Lyra in the garden with David, his doubts softened, if only for a moment. Lyra was kneeling in the grass, arranging small stones in careful patterns. David sat beside her, watching with wide eyes. "See?" she said softly. "If you put these 3 here and add 2 more, it becomes 5. But if you take 2 away, you are left with 3. David clapped his hands. "You make it fun. Not like my teacher at school." Alan stood at the window unseen. The girl's patience surprised him. She spoke with a calmness that carried beyond numbers. She wasn't just teaching his son lessons from books, she was shaping him, touching his heart. Later that day, David ran to his father with excitement. "Dad, Lyra taught me something new." Alan looked up from his papers. "What did she teach you?" "That being kind is also a lesson. She said it's like math. If you give kindness, it adds up. If you take it away, it leaves nothing." Alan froze, the words hitting deeper than he expected. He looked at David, whose innocent smile carried a light Alan hadn't seen since his wife passed. Could this girl, homeless, hunted, alien, be the one restoring what his home had lost? Still, his doubts whispered, "Or is she just making you weak?" That evening, Alan decided to test her. He invited Lyra to dinner at the long table of polished oak. The chandelier sparkled above them, and the silver cutlery shone, but Lyra sat stiffly, uncomfortable. She looked at the food, steaming soup, warm bread, roasted meat, as if it were treasure. Alan noticed the way her hands shook as she reached for the spoon. "Eat," he said gently. "No one will take it from you here." Lyra's glowing eyes flickered with gratitude. She ate slowly, carefully, as though afraid it would vanish. David chattered happily beside her, telling her stories about his school and friends. Halfway through the meal, Alan asked suddenly, "Lyra, what do you want most?" The girl lowered her spoon. For a long moment she was silent. Then she whispered, "To learn and to belong." Alan leaned back, his chest tightening. Simple words, yet heavy with meaning. She wasn't asking for riches or power. She wanted knowledge and a place to call home. That night, after David had gone to bed, Alan found Lyra in the library again. She was staring at the shelves as though they were stars in the sky. He watched her trace the spines of the books, her lips moving as she tried to sound out the titles. "You really want to learn, don't you?" Alan asked quietly. She turned, startled, then nodded. "Books don't hurt. Books don't chain you, they free you." Alan studied her glowing eyes. There was no greed in them, only hunger, a hunger for knowledge. It reminded him of his late wife, who had once said, "Education is the only true wealth." For the first time, Alan felt his wall of doubt cracking. Days passed, and Lyra continued teaching David, but not just with math or reading. She showed him small things, how to listen to the wind, how to be patient when trying again, how to forgive quickly when mistakes happened. David grew calmer, wiser. His teachers at school even noticed. "Your son is improving," they told Alan. "He is more focused, more thoughtful." Alan remained silent, but inside he knew the truth. The change was not his doing. It was Lyra's. Yet danger still lingered. Alan noticed strange cars parked too long near the mansion gates. One evening, a guard reported movement near the outer walls. The hunters had not given up. Alan called extra security, but even as he did, he thought, "How long can I keep this up?" "How long before they come inside?" That night, as he tucked David into bed, David whispered, "Dad, you trust her now, don't you?" Alan hesitated. He looked at his son's hopeful eyes. "I am trying," he admitted. David smiled. "Good, because she trusts us." Alan left the room with a heavy heart. He walked into his study, staring at the city lights through the wide window. He had always believed money and power could solve everything. But now, the true lesson came from a homeless alien child teaching his son in the garden. And deep inside, he realized something. Lyra was not just teaching David. She was teaching him too. But he also knew lessons come with tests. And the test was coming closer. The shocking revelation. The days passed and Lyra's presence in the mansion became less strange. She moved quietly, always respectful, always eager to learn. The guards grew used to her. David adored her, and even Alan found himself watching her with less suspicion. but the fear never left him. One evening, Alan was working in his study when the butler knocked. "Sir," he said carefully, "we found something." Alan looked up. "What is it?" The butler placed a small object on the desk. It was a piece of cloth, part of Lyra's torn dress. Inside the cloth was a faint symbol burned into the fabric. Alan leaned closer. It was not dirt or stain. It was a mark like a seal. A circle surrounded by strange letters, and at the center a star with wings. Alan frowned. He had seen something like this before, in old business documents tied to interstellar trade. It was not just any symbol. It was the insignia of a royal dynasty that had vanished years ago. A dynasty said to rule parts of alien colonies with wisdom and power before their downfall. Alan's chest tightened. Could it be? That night, Alan waited until David had fallen asleep. He found Lyra in the library again, her glowing eyes reflecting candlelight. She was reading slowly, her finger tracing every word. "Lyra," Alan said firmly. "Show me your wrist." She froze. "Why?" "Show me." Hesitantly, she pulled back the sleeve of her ragged dress. And there it was, the same symbol burned faintly into her skin like a birthmark. The circle, the star, the wings. Alan's breath caught. "Do you know what this means?" Lyra looked away. "Yes." "Then explain," he demanded, her glowing eyes filled with sadness. "I wasn't supposed to survive. My family, they were rulers, not of humans but of my kind. We were betrayed. My parents were taken, maybe killed. I was hidden away, but the hunters found the place. They marked me before I escaped so they would always know who I was. I am the last of them." Alan sank into his chair, stunned. The girl in his home, the girl teaching his son, was not just a runaway. She was the heir to a fallen dynasty. "A lost princess, you lied to me," Alan said in a hard voice. Lyra shook her head. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. I thought if you knew you would send me away." Alan's hands clenched. His doubts, his fears, all of them now had weight. She wasn't only hunted because she escaped a camp. She was hunted because she carried power. If the hunters took her, they wouldn't just imprison her. They would use her or destroy her. "Do you understand what this means?" Alan said sharply. "Your presence here could bring armies to my gate. My son could be caught in the crossfire. This is bigger than anything I imagined." Lyra's small voice trembled. "I never asked for this. I only wanted to be free. I wanted to learn. I didn't mean to bring danger." Alan's head spun. He had spent years building walls of safety for his son. Now those walls were crumbling because of a child who carried a secret too big for the world. He stood, pacing the room. "I should hand you over. It would protect my son. It would end this madness." Lyra's glowing eyes widened with pain, but she did not beg. She simply lowered her head and whispered, "If that's what you must do, I understand. I'm tired of running." Her calmness cut deeper than any cry. Alan stared at her, torn between logic and heart. He thought of David's laughter, the joy Lyra had brought back into his house. He thought of her soft voice, her hunger for books, her courage despite fear. Could he really give her up? At that moment, David appeared at the door, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Dad, what's going on?" Alan froze. He had no words. Lyra turned her face away, hiding the mark on her wrist. But David had seen enough. "Don't hurt her, Dad," he whispered. "Please, she's my friend." Alan's chest ached. His son's voice, filled with trust, pulled him back from the edge. He took a deep breath and knelt down. "David, do you understand? She's not just a friend. She's someone important. People will come for her. Dangerous people." David shook his head. "Then we protect her. Like family. Isn't that what family does?" Alan looked at his son, then at Lyra. His doubts battled inside him, but slowly something changed. He realized his son had learned more from this alien girl than any school could teach. Lessons of loyalty, kindness, courage. Finally, Alan stood tall. "Fine, you will stay here, Lyra. But if you are hunted, then this house will not bow. If they want you, they'll have to go through me." Lyra's glowing eyes filled with tears. She nodded, whispering, "Thank you." But deep inside, Alan knew this was only the beginning. The hunters would return, and now that he knew the truth, Alan understood. This was no longer just about one girl. It was about power, legacy, and survival, and the mansion, once only a place of wealth, was about to become a battlefield. The father's choice, the mansion was silent, but Alan's heart was not. He could feel the tension in the air, heavy and sharp like the calm before a storm. Ever since he had discovered the mark on Lyra's wrist, He knew danger would not wait long, and he was right. It happened on a night when the moon was hidden by clouds. The guards outside reported nothing unusual at first, but suddenly the cameras went black one by one. Alan, watching from his study, stood in shock. "They're here," he whispered. Within minutes, dark shapes moved across the garden. Men dressed in black, carrying weapons, their faces covered. The hunters had returned, and this time they were not knocking at the door. Alan rushed upstairs. David and Lyra were in the library, unaware. David was showing her a globe, and Lyra traced the shapes of countries with her glowing eyes, curious and calm. Alan burst inside. "Both of you, stay behind me." "They've come." Lyra's face paled. "They found me." David grabbed her hand. "We won't let them take you." Alan locked the doors and pulled out the small pistol he kept hidden in his drawer. He had never wanted to use it, but tonight his home was no longer safe. The hunters broke in fast. Glass shattered, alarms screamed, and heavy boots echoed on marble floors. Alan led David and Lyra into a hidden passage behind the library, a place known only to him. "Go," he ordered, his voice steady. "This tunnel leads to the wine cellar. Stay quiet." But Lyra shook her head. "They're after me, not you. If I leave, they might spare your son." Alan's jaw tightened. "You are not leaving. You're under my roof now, and no one takes a child from me." "Not ever." The hunters stormed into the library, searching. Alan moved back out, firing a warning shot into the ceiling. "Looking for someone?" he growled. The men paused, surprised. "Hand her over, Alan!" one of them snarled. "You don't know what you're protecting." Alan's eyes were cold. "I know enough. She's not yours to take." Gunfire erupted. Alan ducked behind the heavy desk, his heart pounding. He had never been a soldier, but tonight he fought like one. The sound of bullets shook the house, shattering glass and tearing books apart. Meanwhile, in the hidden passage, Lyra trembled. David held her hand tightly. "Dad will win," he whispered. "He always does." Tears glistened in her glowing eyes. "Why would he risk his life for me?" "Because you're family now," David said simply. In the library, Alan managed to take down 2 hunters with clever tricks, slamming a shelf, cutting off their line of fire. But there were more, too many. He breathed heavily, sweat on his brow. He couldn't hold them forever. Then suddenly a bright glow filled the room. Lyra had stepped out of the passage. Her small figure stood tall, her eyes shining brighter than ever. "Stop!" she cried. The hunters froze, startled by the sudden light. Her mark glowed on her wrist, burning like fire. The room pulsed with strange energy, and for a moment even Alan felt the weight of her hidden power. "You chase me because of my blood," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "But I am not afraid anymore. I am not your prisoner. I am not your property." The hunters raised their weapons again, but Alan stepped beside her, his pistol steady. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me first. And trust me, you won't succeed." For the first time, Lyra saw Alan not just as a wealthy father, but as a protector. A man willing to risk everything for a child who wasn't even his own. The hunters hesitated. Their leader growled in frustration. "This isn't over. The girl belongs to us." Alan's eyes blazed. "No, she belongs to no one." The standoff stretched until the sound of police sirens cut through the night. Alan had secretly triggered the alarm system during the fight. The hunters knew their time was short. With curses, they retreated into the shadows, vanishing as quickly as they had come. The mansion was left broken, glass shattered, walls scarred, but it was still standing. Alan dropped his pistol, his chest heaving. David ran forward, hugging him tightly. "Dad, you did it!" Alan held his son close, his heart pounding with relief. Then Lyra stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "You saved me," she whispered. "You could have given me to them, but you didn't." Alan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not a burden, Lyra. You're not a mistake. You're a child who deserves a future. And as long as you're here, you're part of this family." Her glowing eyes filled with hope for the first time. Slowly, she smiled. "Family," she repeated softly, as if the word itself was new to her. That night, as the mansion settled into silence again, Alan looked out at the horizon. He knew this was not the end. The hunters would return, stronger and more dangerous. But now his choice was made. He was no longer just a father to his son. He was now the protector of a lost princess. And for the first time since his wife's death, Alan felt something powerful inside him, not fear, not doubt, but purpose. The mansion, once only filled with wealth, was now filled with something richer: loyalty, courage, and the bond of a family formed not by blood, but by choice.